The battlefield of Krylos 7 stretched endlessly, a harsh landscape of jagged rocks and scorched earth, echoing with the distant roars of war. Smoke curled into the crimson sky, carrying the smell of burning metal and alien ozone. Explosions shook the ground beneath the soldiers' boots, and flashes of blue plasma seared across the horizon. Humans and Zerathi, uneasy allies against the merciless Zyrex, fought side by side, though mutual distrust lingered like a shadow over every maneuver. Lieutenant Cale Arden crouched behind a jagged boulder, his pulse racing as he scanned the battlefield. He had fought in countless skirmishes across multiple systems, but nothing had prepared him for the chaos unfolding here. The Zyrex attacked without mercy, their sleek black ships cutting through the air with deadly precision. Cale's squad had already lost 2 men and 2 Zerathi warriors to a surprise ambush in the rocky canyon. Amid the smoke and chaos, Cale's eyes caught a movement, a familiar figure struggling to rise amidst the carnage. It was Thalor, the renowned Zerathi warrior whose victories in countless battles had earned him legendary status among his people. But now, he was lying on the ground, blood seeping from a jagged wound along his torso, his limbs trembling as he tried to crawl. The Zyrex had him surrounded, and even from a distance, Cale could see the desperation in his eyes. "Lieutenant Arden," whispered Sergeant Mira, crouched beside him, her voice tight with fear. "Don't even think about it. That's suicide. No one can save him now." Cale didn't answer immediately. He watched as the other Zerathi warriors hesitated, their weapons raised but frozen in indecision. Their culture valued strength and honor above all else, and the idea of a paralyzed warrior surviving under enemy fire seemed both shameful and impossible to them. But Cale couldn't turn away. He had seen too many lives lost because soldiers waited for orders, or for someone else to act. This wasn't about politics, pride, or protocol. This was about saving a life. He clenched his jaw and nodded to Mira. "Cover me. I'm going in." Mira's eyes widened. "Cale, you can't." "I'm going," he said firmly, rising from cover. "If we don't move now, he's dead." Cale sprinted across the rocky terrain, dodging bursts of plasma fire that sizzled past his shoulders. Explosions rocked the ground around him, sending shards of stone into the air. His lungs burned with exertion, and adrenaline coursed through his veins like liquid fire. He could see Thalor now, writhing, struggling to lift his head. The alien warrior's scales were scorched, and his powerful limbs twitched in futile attempts to escape. Cale reached Thalor and dropped to one knee, gripping the alien's torso with careful strength. "I've got you," he said. Even though Thalor's piercing golden eyes reflected anger and disbelief rather than gratitude, the Zerathi warrior species rarely showed vulnerability, and Cale knew the humiliation of being saved by a human would be as difficult to overcome as his injuries. Thalor growled softly, a sound of frustration rather than pain, and tried to push Cale away. "No, I do not need help," he hissed, his voice strained. "You do now," Cale replied firmly. "I'm not leaving you here." "I'm not leaving you here." He hoisted Thalor onto his shoulder as best he could, the alien's weight heavier than any human he had carried before. Cale's squad provided covering fire, picking off the Zyrex snipers that threatened to cut him down. Sparks and debris rained around them, but Cale pushed forward. Every step, a battle against gravity, exhaustion, and incoming fire. "Cale," Mira shouted. "The canyon. You'll never make it through there alive." He didn't respond. He had no choice. The jagged canyon walls offered the only cover from the Zyrex orbital cannons, whose devastating energy beams had already wiped out a section of the battlefield. If they could reach the narrow pass, even temporarily, they might survive long enough to get Thalor to medical aid. A sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath him, throwing Cale off balance. He stumbled, almost dropping Thalor. But grit and sheer determination kept him upright. A plasma bolt seared the air just inches from his head, and Cale felt the heat against his cheek. The world around him became a blur of red smoke, fire, and chaos, but he focused only on one thing: survival. Hours or maybe minutes, Time felt distorted later. Kale stumbled into the narrow canyon. The walls provided some cover, but he was still exposed to sporadic enemy fire. He carefully laid Thalor down behind a large boulder. The alien's chest rose and fell shallowly, and Kale's trained eyes immediately noticed the internal bleeding. He ripped open his medkit and began stabilizing the wounds, applying a temporary clotting agent to the deep gash along Thalor's torso. "You humans," Thalor muttered between shallow breaths. "Reckless. Fools. Fools." Kale glanced up, sweat dripping into his eyes. "Call it courage. Call it insanity. Either way, I'm not letting you die out here." Thalor's jaw tightened, his pride wounded almost as much as his body. The Zirathi had survived countless battles, had bested enemies in hand-to-hand combat and tactical duels across galaxies. But here, he lay dependent on a human soldier. Kale's presence was both salvation and an affront. A paradox Thalor could barely comprehend. Kale worked quickly, stabilizing Thalor enough to move him further along the canyon where the terrain offered better protection. He could feel every ounce of muscle and scale in the alien's body, the unnatural heat of the wound searing his hands even through protective gloves. Each step was a negotiation between his strength, Thalor's weight, and the uneven, jagged ground. Finally, they reached a plateau that offered partial cover and a vantage point over the battlefield. Kale set Thalor down and pulled a portable comm unit from his pack. "Mira," he said. Static filled the device, followed by Mira's urgent voice. "I've been trying, Kale. The Zyrex are controlling comms in this sector. I don't know if you can get through." Kale's jaw tightened. He didn't have time for excuses. He scanned the horizon, his eyes falling on the human med shuttle hovering just beyond the ridge, its engines flickering as it dodged enemy fire. It was risky, almost suicidal, but it was their only chance. "I'll signal it myself," Kale muttered. He grabbed a flare and activated it, sending a streak of bright light into the sky. Seconds later, the shuttle altered course, weaving through plasma fire, heading straight for them. Thalor's eyes widened, a rare moment of recognition and disbelief. "You risk everything? For me?" Kyle shook his head, smiling faintly despite the chaos. "Not for you. For life. For everyone worth saving. That's what we do." The shuttle landed roughly, kicking up dust and debris. Two human medics rushed out, assessing the situation with practiced efficiency. Kale helped them lift Thalor into the shuttle, careful not to aggravate the injuries further. As the shuttle lifted off, heading toward the main human outpost, Kale looked down at the battlefield. Explosions still tore through the terrain, but a small spark of hope lingered amidst the destruction. Inside the shuttle, Thalor's breathing was shallow but steady. The alien warrior finally looked at Kale with something approaching respect, though the pride still lingered. "Human," he said quietly. "You survived. You helped me." Kale smiled, settling against the wall of the shuttle, bruised and exhausted but alive. "And that's all anyone can do, Thalor. Survive and help." As the shuttle flew towards safety, Kale felt a shift in the way he viewed his role in this war. Humanity had always been underestimated by alien species, seen as fragile and reckless, yet here he was, proving that courage, ingenuity, and determination could save not only lives but entire alliances. Outside the viewport, the red haze of Krylos 7 stretched endlessly, a reminder of the war still raging below. But for the first time in countless battles, Kale felt the weight of one undeniable truth. Sometimes, one person's decision to act could turn the tide. Even against impossible odds, the shuttle passed through the final energy shield of the human outpost, and medics immediately took over, preparing Thalor for surgery and advanced care. Kale stepped back, exhausted but resolute. Other soldiers in the shuttle looked at him with curiosity, awe, and perhaps even a hint of jealousy. No one else had dared to do what he did. "Thalor, weak but conscious, reached out a clawed hand. Human, Kale Arden, you saved me. Against all who turned away. Kale grasped the hand firmly, meeting the alien's gaze. I saved you because it was right. Nothing more. And nothing less. For the first time, Thalor didn't argue, didn't resist. He simply let the human soldier's words sink in, realizing that strength came in many forms, sometimes in muscle, sometimes in courage, sometimes in unwavering resolve to do what others wouldn't. The shuttle hummed quietly as it sped toward the human outpost, leaving the chaos of Krylos 7 behind. Kale knew the next battles would be harder. The Zarathi Council might not forgive him for interfering in their traditions. The Zyrex would strike again, stronger and more relentless. And Thalor's path to recovery would be long and painful. But for now, one life had been saved. And in a war that seemed endless and merciless, that was enough to kindle hope. Kale sat back, closing his eyes for a moment. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but also the unmistakable fire of purpose. Humanity's edge wasn't in technology alone, or numbers, or brute force. It was in the choices made when all others turned away. And Kale Arden had chosen to act. The shuttle carried them forward, into the uncertain future, where survival, courage, and human ingenuity would prove themselves once more. The human medical outpost was a stark contrast to the chaos of Krylos 7. Its metallic walls gleamed under bright artificial lights, and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and machinery. Here, war felt distant, almost unreal. Outside, the battle raged, but inside, Lieutenant Kale Arden moved with precision and purpose. He had insisted on accompanying Thalor, the paralyzed Zarathi warrior, into recovery. Despite exhaustion, he refused to leave him alone. Thalor lay on a reinforced medical bed, tubes and sensors attached to his body, monitoring every vital sign. His golden eyes, once blazing with the pride of a warrior, now looked dull, wary, and frustrated. The Zarathi warrior's body was still frail, his powerful limbs unresponsive, and yet his mind remained sharp. Human, Thalor muttered, his voice hoarse. Why do you stay? Others left me to die. Kale adjusted a support brace under Thalor's neck, careful not to jostle the alien. Because I don't leave people behind, he said simply. Not in my squad, not on the battlefield, and certainly not now. Thalor's gaze hardened. You risked yourself. For me. Foolish. Insane. And yet, you acted. Why? Kale shrugged, tired but determined. I didn't have time to think about why. I just acted. A silence fell between them. Outside, the distant rumble of the battlefield was a reminder of what had been left behind. Thalor's pride bristled at the idea of relying on a human. Yet a small spark of respect flickered within him. He had survived countless battles, faced enemies stronger and more cunning than humans. Yet this human soldier had defied danger, culture, and protocol to save him. That was something Thalor could not ignore. Dr. Lena Voss, a human medic specializing in neural regeneration technology, entered the room. Her short, efficient steps carried authority, and she immediately began assessing Thalor's condition. He's stable, she said, glancing at Kale. But the paralysis is severe. Recovery will be slow, and I don't know if he'll regain full mobility. Kale frowned. We don't have time for don't knows. Can we start therapy now? Dr. Voss shook her head. Not yet. First, he needs to heal physically. Then we can introduce neural stimulation. It's delicate work, and the Zarathi have specific requirements about who touches whom, especially in medical situations. Thalor's eyes narrowed. I will not allow humans to touch me. It is dishonorable. Kale sat beside him, leaning forward. I'm not just a human, Thalor. I'm the one who saved your life. You can trust me. If we wait for honor, You might not live long enough to restore it." The alien warrior remained silent, a flicker of internal struggle crossing his face. Pride and survival were at war within him, and Kale understood better than anyone that this battle was as mental as it was physical. Days passed. Kale stayed close to Thalor, learning the nuances of Zarathi physiology while ensuring the warrior's mental state remained stable. Thalor resisted therapy at first, frustrated by his weakness. His once commanding voice often erupted in anger at small setbacks, and his golden eyes sometimes blazed with fury at being forced into dependency. "You humans are relentless," Thalor growled one evening, as Kale helped him with simple mobility exercises. "You do not understand shame, honor, discipline." Kale wiped sweat from his brow. "Maybe. But I do understand survival. And right now, survival is more important than pride." Thalor's claws tapped the metal floor in irritation. "I am a warrior. I do not need saving. I will rise. Alone." Kale smiled faintly, patient. "You won't rise alone. Not everyone fights like you, but not everyone has to. Some of us fight differently. We find ways to win, even when we're outmatched, even when it seems impossible. That's what humans do." Slowly, through rigorous therapy and Kale's guidance, Thalor began to regain minor motor control. At first, it was just fingers twitching, toes flexing. But each small victory brought a spark of hope. Kale encouraged him, blending human ingenuity with Zarathi discipline. He showed Thalor ways to use his remaining strength strategically, emphasizing clever positioning, leverage, and adaptive techniques rather than raw power. Thalor's recovery was not linear. Some days were filled with progress, others with setbacks that left him frustrated and even resentful. Kale remained steadfast, reminding him of what had been at stake the day he saved him. "Every step counts," Kale would say. "Every choice matters. You survived when others turned away. Don't waste it by giving up now. Every choice matters." Meanwhile, outside the medical outpost, tensions simmered among the Zarathi Council. News of Kale's actions had spread, and opinions were divided. Some warriors whispered in admiration of the human soldier who had saved their champion, while others saw it as a disgrace, a violation of Zarathi codes. Thalor himself was caught between two worlds, grateful to Kale, yet painfully aware of the cultural implications of accepting help from a human. One day, Kale received a message from his commanding officer. "Kale, the Zyrics are regrouping. Recon reports suggest they're planning a major strike on Krylos 7. You need to prepare Thalor, and fast." Kale's jaw tightened. He had hoped for more time, but reality offered none. Thalor's body was not yet fully restored, and the alien warrior's pride still simmered under the surface. Yet Kale knew that if they were to survive the coming assault, Thalor had to be ready, even if that meant pushing beyond his limits. "Thalor," Kale said, entering the recovery room, "we have no choice. The Zyrics are coming back stronger. You need to be ready to fight, to survive. I'll help you, but you have to trust me." Thalor's golden eyes met Kale's. He remained silent for a long moment, a storm of pride, fear, and determination flickering across his face. Finally, he nodded slightly. "I will try, human, but do not make me weak." Kale smiled faintly. "You won't be weak. You'll be smarter, faster, stronger in ways you've never imagined. That's the human edge, and soon, it'll be yours too." Over the following weeks, Kale worked tirelessly with Thalor. He introduced new training methods that combined human strategy with Zarathi combat techniques. They practiced balance, reflexes, and coordination. Kale emphasized improvisation and adaptability skills the Zarathi rarely valued, but ones that could mean the difference between life and death against the Zyrics. As Thalor's body regained strength, so did his mind. He began to understand the value of Kale's lessons, appreciating that courage alone was not enough. Survival required flexibility, creativity, and the willingness to challenge tradition when it endangered life. Slowly, Admiration replaced resentment. The once proud warrior began to see Kale not only as a savior but as a teacher, yet not all Zarathi were convinced. Council representatives visited the outpost, their expressions cold and judgmental. "This is not how a warrior should recover," one said, his voice sharp. "Relying on a human is disgraceful. You are compromising Zarathi honor." Thalor's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to defend Kale's methods, but pride restrained him. Instead, he focused on his training, silently proving that strength and honor were not always measured by tradition alone. Kale, noticing the tension, said quietly to Thalor one evening, "Ignore them. Honor isn't about following rules blindly. It's about doing what's right when it matters most. Right now, surviving and stopping the Zyrex is more honorable than any council could measure." Thalor's eyes reflected understanding. He nodded slightly, acknowledging Kale's words without breaking his composed demeanor. The warrior was learning that true strength came not only from muscle or tradition, but from wisdom, courage, and adaptability. During this period, Kale also ensured Thalor was mentally prepared for the coming battle. He ran simulations, teaching him to anticipate enemy strategies, to read situations quickly, and to trust instincts sharpened by experience. Thalor's mind, once focused purely on honor and physical dominance, began to embrace new ways of thinking, ways that could outsmart the Zyrex. Even when outnumbered or outgunned, by the end of Part 2, Thalor had regained significant mobility. His once paralyzed limbs now moved with controlled precision, and he could stand with Kale's support. Yet more than his physical recovery, it was his understanding that had evolved. He had learned to respect human ingenuity, to see Kale's courage not as reckless foolishness, but as a model of resilience and adaptability. Outside the recovery room, the distant thunder of Zyrex engines served as a grim reminder that the war was far from over. Kale looked at Thalor and said, "The real test is coming. Are you ready?" 2000. Kale. 2000. Thalor straightened, a spark of determination in his golden eyes. "I am ready. Thanks to you." "Human." Kale nodded, silently acknowledging that their partnership had become something more than necessity. It was a bond forged in fire, battle, and mutual respect. A bond that would be tested like never before. As the Zyrex threat loomed larger, both human and Zarathi forces prepared for the decisive confrontation on Krylos 7. Thalor would not fight alone, nor would Kale. Together, they represented a new hope. That unity, courage, and human ingenuity could defy even the most overwhelming odds. For now, they trained, recovered, and planned. Every day brought Thalor closer to full strength, and every lesson Kale taught edged them nearer to victory. The coming battle would demand more than raw power. It would require trust, strategy, and the extraordinary resilience that only humanity and Thalor together could offer. And in the quiet moments, when the medical hum of the outpost filled the room, Thalor would sometimes glance at Kale, understanding at last that being saved was not weakness, and that choosing to fight with allies, even human ones, was not dishonor. It was survival, and in a galaxy full of merciless enemies, survival was the greatest honor of all. The sky above Krylos 7 burned red as dawn broke over the jagged horizon. The Zyrex fleet had returned, their massive black ships blotting out the sun and casting shadows over the battlefield. Thunderous blasts shook the ground, and plasma fire cut through the air in lethal arcs. Humanity and the Zarathi had prepared as best they could, but the enemy's numbers and firepower were overwhelming. Every soldier knew that failure here would mean death, not just for themselves, but for the alliances they had fought to build. Lieutenant Kale Arden tightened his armor and checked his weapon. Beside him, Thalor moved with a precision and strength that belied his recent paralysis. The human-inspired training Kale had introduced over the past weeks had transformed the once frustrated Zarathi warrior into a strategist as well as a fighter. Thalor's golden eyes scanned the battlefield, calculating angles, distances, and enemy positions with remarkable clarity. "Kale," Thalor said quietly, his voice steady and calm. "They are advancing faster than expected. Our left flank will be exposed within minutes. Kale nodded. Then we'll hold it together. Watch my side, I'll watch yours. And remember, adapt. Don't rely on strength alone. Use your mind, your environment, your allies. The Zyrex won't expect it. The battle erupted with a deafening roar. Zyrex ships swooped down, firing indiscriminately. Ground units of both species engaged in brutal firefights. Plasma bolts meeting alien energy shields in showers of sparks. Kale and Thalor moved as a unit, covering each other while directing nearby soldiers to strategic positions. Thalor's mobility, once impaired, now allowed him to leap across rubble and climb debris, striking Zyrex units with precision. His movements were calculated, human techniques and Zarathi strength blending seamlessly. A massive Zyrex warbeast charged across the open field, its multi-limbed body crushing terrain and scattering soldiers in its path. Kale fired his plasma rifle, aiming for the joints, but the creature barely faltered. Thalor assessed the creature's movements, spotting a weakness Kale had not noticed. "Kale, left flank, its armor joint," Thalor shouted, leaping onto a nearby rock and then onto the creature itself. His claws found the weak point, and with a calculated strike, he disabled one of its legs. The beast roared, toppling over and creating chaos among the enemy lines. Kale grinned despite the chaos. "That's the human edge you learned, right? Using your head, not just fists." Thalor landed beside him, breathing hard but steady. "It is effective. I see now the value of your ways." They continued advancing, weaving through smoke and debris, rallying human and Zarathi soldiers alike. Kale noticed the subtle changes among the Zarathi ranks. Many who had once whispered about the disgrace of relying on a human now watched in awe as Thalor combined their traditional combat style with Kale's strategies. The old skepticism was slowly giving way to respect, an unspoken acknowledgement of what true teamwork and adaptability could achieve. The Zyrex command ship loomed above, its shadow casting the battlefield into partial darkness. From its deck, a powerful beam weapon fired indiscriminately, destroying cover and forcing soldiers to scatter. Kale knew that taking down the command ship was the key to turning the tide, but it would require more than brute force. They needed strategy, cunning, and perfect coordination. "Thalor," Kale said, "we need to get to that ship. You, me, and a small strike team. The rest will hold the line." Thalor's eyes gleamed with determination. "I will follow. We will end this threat together." They moved quickly, navigating the battlefield with a combination of stealth and calculated aggression. Zyrex patrols fell one by one, their movements anticipated and countered. Kale marveled at how Thalor applied human tactics, cover, flanking, diversion alongside his own brutal combat skill. The synergy was unlike anything Kale had ever witnessed. Finally, they reached the base of the command ship, a massive structure hovering just above the ground. The Zyrex sent waves of guards, but Thalor and Kale fought with a precision born of trust and training. Thalor's claws tore through armored plating while Kale provided covering fire, his rifle picking off threats from angles Thalor could not reach. They moved as a single unit, instinctive and deadly. As they approached the control center, the ship shuddered violently under heavy fire from both human and Zarathi units. Kale planted explosives while Thalor guarded him, his enhanced reflexes keeping him one step ahead of incoming enemies. Time seemed to stretch, each second a fight for survival and success. The final Zyrex commander emerged, a towering figure with multi-limbed precision weapons and an intimidating armor frame. Thalor stepped forward, unhesitant, and engaged it directly. Using techniques Kale had taught him to exploit openings and avoid unnecessary damage, Kale circled, providing fire support and guiding Thalor to weak points in the enemy's defense. The battle between Thalor and the commander was fierce. Claws met energy blades, blows shook the ground, and sparks flew with every strike. But Thalor's adaptability and strategy proved superior. He dodged, countered, and finally landed a decisive strike, sending the Zyrex commander crashing into the ship's hull. Kale detonated the explosives at precisely the right moment, destroying the command ship's core systems and sending it spiraling into the atmosphere. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The Xyrix forces faltered, their coordination broken, their command structure destroyed. Human and Zarathi soldiers, though battered and exhausted, cheered as they realized the tide had turned. Thalor stood beside Kale, chest heaving, golden eyes gleaming with unmasked respect. Human. Kale Arden. You taught me well. Not only strength, but how to think, to adapt, to survive. Kale smiled faintly, wiping sweat and grime from his brow. And you taught me something too. That courage isn't limited to one species. That sometimes, survival and honor aren't mutually exclusive. They can coexist if we work together. The Zarathi Council approached, their expressions wary at first. But as they watched Thalor move confidently, leading squads to secure the remaining Xyrix forces, their skepticism melted into admiration. One elder stepped forward, bowing slightly to Kale. You have shown what we did not understand. Humanity is worthy. You have saved not just a warrior, but a future. Thalor's pride, once fragile, now shone in a new light. He turned to Kale and said quietly, I underestimated humans. I underestimated you. I am grateful. And I will not forget this lesson. Kale chuckled softly. Good. Don't forget it. You'll need it if the galaxy keeps testing us. The battlefield slowly quieted as surviving Xyrix forces retreated. Fires burned in the distance, but hope, resilience, and unity blazed brighter. Kale and Thalor walked side by side through the aftermath, human and Zarathi soldiers nodding respectfully as they passed. It was a new chapter, one in which cooperation and courage, not prejudice or rigid tradition, defined victory. In the days that followed, Krylos 7 was secured. Human and Zarathi engineers worked side by side to repair defenses, while medics ensured the wounded received care. Thalor, fully recovered, began training alongside Kale in preparation for any future threats. Now, a living testament to what could be achieved when courage met ingenuity. Kale reflected on the journey, from the moment he had charged into enemy fire to save a single life, to standing victorious alongside a warrior who had once doubted him. Humanity had been underestimated across galaxies, considered reckless and weak by countless species. Yet here, in the heart of a war-torn planet, Kale had proven that human courage, creativity, and determination could change the course of history. Thalor approached him one evening as the sun dipped below the jagged horizon. Kale Arden, he said, his voice steady and sincere. Your actions have shown me what it truly means to fight, not just with strength, but with mind and heart. I am honored to call you my comrade. Kale smiled faintly, tired but content. The honor is mutual. And remember, we survive not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to turn away. That is the human edge. Thalor nodded, understanding fully now that strength was not measured by tradition or brute force alone. It was measured by courage, ingenuity, and the will to act when all others hesitated. Together, human and Zarathi soldiers celebrated their hard-won victory, yet both knew this was only one battle in a larger war. The galaxy was vast, full of threats that would test their limits again and again. But one truth had been proven. When humanity and its allies refused to turn away, no enemy, no matter how powerful, could prevail. Kale stood on a ridge, looking out over Krylos 7. The planet, scarred and battered, was still alive, still beautiful in its own harsh way. He thought of the countless soldiers lost, of the victories gained, and of the one life that had sparked a chain of events leading to triumph. A single act of courage, a refusal to turn away, had changed everything. Thalor joined him silently, watching the horizon with the same reflective gaze. Together, they understood that true strength came from more than skill or tradition. It came from the heart, the mind, and the unwavering courage to act when no one else would. As night fell over Krylos 7, The stars above seemed brighter, as if the universe itself recognized humanity's spark. Kael and Thalor knew the road ahead would be long and dangerous, but for the first time, they faced it with confidence, united not only by battle, but by respect, trust, and a shared understanding of what it truly meant to survive. And in that moment, amidst the ruins of war and the triumph of courage, humanity had earned its place, not just as a species of fighters, but as a force of ingenuity, resilience, and unwavering spirit capable of facing any challenge the galaxy could throw at it.